Good morning, everybody. I've started to record this video a couple of times now, and there keeps on being very loud hospital noises. So you might hear some beeping or some people like being very loud and things like that. That's just the way it is in the hospital. So you are joining me today to hear about my birth story for my second child. And I feel like second child is special because I'm a second child and there's that special affinity and connection. But anyway, so my second pregnancy was planned. She actually, I became pregnant with her after a miscarriage. So in between my first daughter and my second, and they were about 2.5 years apart. I did have a multiple pregnancy, a pregnancy of multiples, and then it did end in miscarriage. So I lost them, and I'll probably do a podcast or a video on that at some point because it was quite the experience. So maybe we'll talk about that another time. But so I was very nervous about getting pregnant again, and my first pregnancy, I just trusted the process and everything turned out fine. And the second time around, I didn't even want to get attached to my fetus until not only was she born, but she had lived for at least a day. I was very nervous about getting emotionally attached again and just going through the stages of grief. So a pregnancy, though, was pretty easy, very little to no morning sickness. Um, she was measuring big, and I like a pound. She ended up being about a pound, more than a pound heavier than my first daughter. So I was getting nervous, and so I talked to my physician about getting induced a week early, and that's what I ended up doing. But leading up to that induction, as I got more pregnant, my worst symptom was that I could fall asleep, but I couldn't stay asleep. And it wasn't even because of like the pregnancy pains. It was just like my body was like, you need 3 hours of sleep and you're good. Like it was very obvious my hormones were a little wonky. And this was before smartphones. This was before streaming. So I would just wake up, maybe 2, 3 in the morning, after going to bed, 10, 11, 12, whatever. And I was just awake. So I would just do chores. I would be doing chores at like 3 in the morning, folding, doing laundry. I wouldn't vacuum. That's noisy. Doing dishes, anything. Just just to keep myself occupied, reading books. I had a Nook at that time. Now I have a Kindle, but I had a Nook and I would read. It was frustrating. But if that's my worst complaint, that's okay because I've had a lot worse pregnancy symptoms. So I had that. I had lower back pain. Um, the lower back pain is pretty common for new mamas, for pregnant mamas. And during your pregnancy, you have more fluid, like excess blood in your system to support your baby, and just more fluid all around. So there's more swelling, more pressure on your nerves and your joints. And so back pain happens. Plus, you have this big, heavy belly, and your organs are changing, everything's changing. So that lower back pain is fairly normal, but you just want to make sure that you're protecting your back. And I can talk more about that another time. So with my second kiddo, I was really nervous that bringing her home was going to be a really hard transition. But from my experience, it wasn't. My first daughter was much more difficult. Going from 0 to 1 versus 1 to 2, for me, was no comparison. I know that different moms have different experiences, and I think part of my transition was made more easy because my second daughter she had the most amicable personality out of all of my newborns. She was pretty easygoing. You'd lie her down in the crib, and she'd be awake, and then she'd just go to sleep, and she'd just wake up, and she would sleep mostly through the night. Just pretty great baby. And I argue it's because she's number two, just like me, right? But anyway, so leading up to the pregnancy, being concerned about her size, we decided for me to get an induction a week early. Right before the induction, I went to go get my toenails done with my mom and my sister. We went out to eat. I had my bags packed, handed over my kiddos to my mom because she was going to take care of them while I was in the hospital, and went in and got induced. Um, and then my labor progressed. My husband, I didn't have him come in just because I actually prefer to labor by myself, just with like, nursing staff. It's just a personal preference. I don't like to feel like I need to entertain anyone while I'm in pain, and I don't like to complain endlessly. So it's just easier for me. But anyway, I labored, and for quite a while. And before the process, my physician and I had discussed if I wanted an epidural, and the answer was yes. After my first pregnancy and delivery, when it was a 36-hour ordeal and lots of pain, I didn't get an epidural till 24 hours in. Um, I realized that I didn't want to do that again. And because he knew it took my body so long to progress from a 0 to 3 centimeters dilation, he agreed that I could get the epidural when I was about at a 2. And the reason for that is it takes a long time for me to get to a 3, but once I'm to a 3, I progress like within half an hour, maybe an hour, from a 3 to a 10, and I push on one, and I get the baby out on one push. So it doesn't leave a lot of time to get an epidural. If we're waiting for me to get to like a 4 or something, I wouldn't be able to get an epidural. So that's what we ended up doing. Nursing staff was great. I got really lucky, and everything was smooth sailing. Once I got my epidural, I called my husband in, and he was there, and I was comfortable. They let me eat, so my belly wasn't starving. Um, and then 18 hours later, I pushed. So start to stop, beginning labor to delivery was 18 hours, which was much better than 36 hours. And 24 of those hours on my first child was me laboring without epidurals or anything like that. So this was a lot faster for me. And I just tend to have a slower body when it comes to labor. But anyway, during that 18-hour period, especially after I got my epidural, I was really able to focus on the connection um, between not even my daughter, because I was nervous to get attached after I'd had a miscarriage of multiples before, but more so a connection to the experience of motherhood. So the experience, thought of my grandmother and my husband's grandmother and my other grandmother, and my daughter was named for both of her great grandmas, two of her great grandmas. And so I was thinking about them, and um, one of them had passed, one of them was alive, and just really thinking about the chain of life and those big ideas of spirituality and connection to others and to the world, humanity in general, to animals, the earth, all of it. And it was just such a wonderful, beautiful spiritual experience, the most spiritual out of any of my births. So, pushed her out in one push. She came out. She was perfect. And she was just so easygoing. She was my most easygoing child as far as being a newborn. She's one that I could just put in her bassinet or her crib, and she'd fall asleep. She'd be awake, then she'd fall asleep. She would sleep mostly through the night, starting pretty early, 4 hours or so, 4 to 5 hours, which is great. Um, and she just didn't cry much. She loved the car seat. She was easy, which was really good because my first daughter was challenging. And we didn't know then, but we found out at a later date that my oldest daughter had ADHD. So you can imagine if I would have had two kiddos that were challenging, it would have been really hard. But because my second one was so easygoing, and it made life a lot easier. In fact, I was just planning to have those two, but she was so easy, she coaxed me into having a third down the road. But that's another story. That's the next one. But when I brought her home, I was nervous about the transition. because I did get postpartum depression with my first daughter, and um, just I experienced a lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation, a lot of unrealistic demands on myself. And so with my second daughter, I planned ahead for that transition. I spent a lot of time planning ahead, things like we didn't normally have like paper plates or plasticware, things like that. But I went ahead and bought all of that in preparation, just so I didn't have to be doing the dishes all the time. Um, I reached out to people. I asked them, hey, can you come and help with this? Can you help with that? And my church group, they offered to bring meals, and I accepted. So I just had a lot more connection, a lot more help, and I knew kind of what to expect. Um, I didn't know what to expect as far as having two children interacting with each other, but and that was a challenge. I mean, it wasn't terribly hard. It wasn't terribly hard, but it was a challenge. Just a cute little story. As soon as I had my number two, we called my mom, and because she had the other kids, or my other daughter, didn't have any more at that point, but he called my mom. She had my daughter, so she came to the hospital, brought my oldest, um, and then the first thing she said, because I had chicken strips for my meal because it was lunchtime, and I really wasn't very hungry. And so my daughter asked if she could have the chicken strips, and I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. I'm not hungry. And as soon as she got them, she tried to offer her little sister chicken strip. And then I said, "Oh, honey, she can't have it." And she looked and she said, "She doesn't got no teeth." So it was really cute and sweet. And she had wanted a sibling so bad. Um, and I had had that miscarriage, and she didn't fully understand that, but she kind of knew that we were going to have a baby or babies, and then we weren't, and she really wanted a sibling, so she was very excited. Um, they kind of have this rivalry though now. My second daughter, she's always held against my oldest that she wasn't born first. She has the personality that she wants to be in charge, and she's very responsible, very organized, very on top of things. And my oldest daughter is very much like an artist, right? Like performance art, the fine arts, all of that. She has an artist brain. And so my other daughter, she's much more logical, organized, she's athletic, and they just kind of have this rivalry. But there is this deep love that started very early on when we started building those relationships in the hospital. And it was just really great. I made sure on that second child to not let as many people know that we had had the baby, just so I wouldn't be so overwhelmed in the hospital. And we did have some visitors. My grandma, who my daughter was named after, actually happened to be in town, not because of the birth, it was for something else, but she was able to come visit me in the hospital and hold my daughter and just have this really special moment. um, so, with my first daughter, everyone had said, stay in the hospital as long as you can, stay in the hospital as long as you can. And so we did. We stayed in the hospital for like 3 days, and it was awful. I don't know why people told me that. The bed was uncomfortable. The staff was really sweet. It was a really nice hospital. I just wanted to be home. And so with the second one, I was like, I'm out of here. When can I leave? Let me get out of here. And so I think we stayed one night. We brought her home, and my husband, remember the first pregnancy, he didn't take any time off, literally none. I had my daughter over the weekend, and he went back to work right after. As soon as we got home, he went back to work. And with my second one, I was like, no, I can't do that again. I need you. And so we planned in advance that he would take 1 week off, um, completely. And then after that, he would take 2 weeks of half days. That way he could, help out, get things prepared, that sort of thing. And so that's what we ended up doing. And it was great. It was a lot easier transition. Um, and I had support and I had company and I just really thrived. So I kind of saw in the first child, a lot of what happened was I just didn't know how my body would react. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know the pitfalls, and I kind of just did, what my mom did, and that it just didn't work for me. It didn't work for my body. And she was very disapproving of me getting epidurals, for example. But I'm like, Mom, my body takes a long time to labor, and yours was quite quick, and and it's not a competition. I didn't want to do something that was going to make me miserable just to please someone else. So that the second time around, I knew my body, I knew my situation, I knew what I needed, and so I really followed through with that. And I had an excellent physician who collaborated with me and was willing to, as long as it was safe, kind of do what I communicated to him would work. Um, I was again really worried about pregnancy loss, and I did have some scares during that pregnancy. At one point, and when they did an ultras, or they were just listening with a Doppler. I think that's what it's called, right? Yeah. Anyway, so they were listening to the heartbeat. Or they were trying to, and they couldn't find it. My physician. I actually started my pregnancy with a female physician, and she moved halfway through my pregnancy. So this is with her. So she couldn't find the heartbeat, and I saw the look of concern on her face, and I was just like, here it is again. It's happening again. Here we are. And at this point, I was well past the 20-week mark. I think I was like 22 or 23 weeks. And, she rushed me. It's getting a little emotional, but she rushed me to the ultrasound room, and she performed an ultrasound, and it took a minute to find my daughter. And um, I I can't even explain what that felt like, especially because I had my first daughter, miscarriage of triplets, actually, and then I had her, and it was looking like she was going to be stillborn. And in that moment, it lasted an eternity. But I really stilled myself because I was like, I'm not going to let myself get attached. And fortunately, after a little while, she was able to find baby, and she was relieved. I was relieved. And we went on with life, and everything turned out okay. But again, that reinforced that lack of attachment. That was something different from my first child. My first daughter, I felt bonded to her as soon as I found out I was pregnant. And I just trusted everything that it was going to work out, and it did. And the second time around, I was a lot less trusting. But it turned out okay. The only difficulty that I had with my daughter was breastfeeding. She wasn't a fan. I forced the issue for 4 months, and the breaking point for me, we were in the Chicago airport. I think, yeah, we were in the Chicago airport, yep, visiting family, and I think we were headed home. And I was trying to breastfeed her in the airport. And this was back before there was a big push for breastfeeding and women's rights when they're breastfeeding. So I was trying to be very discreet and had a blanket over me and just trying to blend in, not call attention to myself. And my daughter did not want to breastfeed. She hated it. And it wasn't, she had a great latch. There was nothing wrong. She just didn't like it. And so she was screaming and thrashing because she was hungry, but she did not want the breast. She wanted a bottle. And so, she loved her binkies, she loved her bottles, and I was crying and I was mortified, so embarrassed. Everyone was staring like, what is this woman doing to that baby? Why is she wrapping her in a blanket? Um, and I'm sure a lot of them were just like, oh, poor mom. But in my eyes, I felt very judged, and I just was done. I was tired of being rejected. I felt like she was rejecting me over and over again. And I was tired of the fight and I was mortified. And so I said, no, okay, as soon as we get home, we're done. And my milk supply had gone down because she hated nursing. So it was pretty easy to wean her. Well, I mean, she weaned herself. My oldest also did, she weaned herself, but around 7 months. I didn't know what to do when she did that, and she just refused. And my breasts got engorged, and they very nearly got infected, and I didn't know to release some milk, and that she might have continued nursing if I wasn't so engorged, because once you're engorged, it's hard for them to latch. So anyway, um, I got like damage to my breast tissue. It was no bueno. So I kind of knew with my second daughter some things to do, the tips and tricks, and just let a little bit of milk out whenever I needed to. I did the whole cabbage inside of the bra, against like a sports bra, wearing a sports bra to kind of compress my breasts. Um, I believe I took Benadryl, and the milk dried up pretty easy, and it worked great. You know, she just wanted to be she just wanted to be bottle fed, and once we did that and we honored each other, everything turned out fine. So just like a side note, um, some people choose to do bottles and formula and that works for them. And some people choose to breastfeed and that works for them. And some people choose to do a mismatch. And I don't think that there's one right way to do it. I do think there are benefits of breast milk that you don't get with formula, but mama matters too, and baby matters. So their personalities and their needs and wants also matter. Schedules matter. And so I would encourage people to try to breastfeed, but I would never shame someone for formula feeding, bottle feeding. I have been shamed for it. Um, but and that was completely unfair. I have ranged. I have the shortest period of time I breastfed was 4 months, and the longest, oh my gosh, guys, is super granola. I don't even want to tell you because I don't want you to be like, oh, she's one of those. But I breastfed for 3.5 years with one of my kids, so I have the range. I've done everything in between, and again, there's no right or wrong, and it's about mom and baby, about what's healthy for them emotionally, physically, and what works for the schedule, and what other people think it shouldn't really matter. It doesn't matter because it's not their bodies, it's not their baby, it's none of those things. So whatever you choose, I'm happy for you, and I don't think that we should judge each other based off of the food we feed our children. As long as they're happy and healthy and growing and they're fed, it doesn't matter. You do what you need to do to get through the day. So that sweet girl has just been I feel this special connection to her because we're both second born children, and I feel like we have similar personalities. But it has been fun to watch the dynamic between the oldest and the second oldest. That's continued to this day. And my second child will readily admit that, she's never forgiven her older sister for being born first. She says it. She's like, yeah, it's true. And I can relate because I'm definitely, I said, as a second born, I was the one in charge. I was the responsible one, the one that always wanted to call the shots, and the little mom, all of those things. But it's just fun to watch the personalities of your children. And also, it was good to see after my first pregnancy, which was so difficult, as far as the labor and delivery, I should say, and then transitioning home was so difficult. It was good to have an experience with my second child that was just so easy, so seamless and flawless. Um, and really, I didn't have a hard time, getting the two girls to work out in our schedule. My oldest was really, even though she has ADHD, she was very easygoing as far as having a new sister and having that new sister have needs. And she just loved her little sister. So I lucked out there, and I did have a lot of support. But I think this really speaks not just to personalities, because we shouldn't judge each other based off the temperaments of children, like, oh, that baby screams all the time because the mom doesn't know what she's doing. No, Babies are born with personalities. Like, we don't know why the baby is screaming, so we shouldn't judge. With my first daughter, as a mom of a kiddo with ADHD, I've gotten judged a lot. And because she was my first, I I didn't know. I really beat myself up. Um, and with my second, she was pretty easygoing. And so my parenting didn't change. It was personalities. So I think, something to keep in mind is that children have their little personalities, and that's okay, and we're just doing the best we can with them. But it worked out. The transitioning was better planned, better organized. I knew myself better. I did a lot more research. There were more resources available. And with my first daughter, it was really kind of just the what to expect when you're expecting. And then with my second, there were a lot more things online. Didn't have a smartphone, but there was just more stuff online. And I also kind of knew what to look for and how to advocate for myself with my physician. And I think that is so important. And occupational therapists are, again, experts in transition planning, and they can help save mamas lots of time and energy on having a difficult pregnancy, labor, delivery, coming home, trying to make everything work. So I would take from this, if you are going to have another kiddo or your first, look at all the resources, take a birthing class, research online, and um, take listen to what other people tell you, your mom, maybe your partner's mom, whatever, but take it with a grain of salt, because we're all different. So just because something worked for one person, like my mom not having epidurals, for me it didn't work, and me trying to force it, just it wasn't good. And so once I trusted my own body and my own needs, things turned out a lot better. And I did luck out because she was pretty easy. And so she did. She convinced me to have another one. So I had a number three, but that's that's the story for next time. So thank you. Thanks for joining. Hopefully I see you next time with my number three story. Bye.